All right, guys. Welcome to another episode of Friday Night Lights on the Bayou. I'm your host, Grant Sasher of Ruger Sports Media, as well as Crescent City Sports. Chase cannot join us tonight as he's had other obligations they already planned for. So today we're going to be talking about Central Louisiana high school football with Lamar Gafford and Alex Newell of CenLaPreps. Guys, welcome to the show. How you guys doing?
Doing fine. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here as well. I mean, you got the brain trust right here, so that's a good thing.
Lamar's flexing his awards in the back, but that's what happens when you're a really good journalist. So, but you know what? I'm glad he's on because him and Alex are gonna talk a little bit about what's going on in Central Louisiana. So, us right off the bat, what are some of the top teams coming back in CenLa?
After you, Lamar.
Yeah, I think going ahead, I mean, you got to look at Ash. You got to look at Alexandria Senior High definitely as being one of those teams, especially with the guys that they have there, JT Lindsay, and of course the skill players that they have, and also the offensive line that they have too. But you also got to look at teams like Bunkie and Leesville, Peabody. Some of those schools there that are also plan to have big years as well with some of their top players that they have. I think it's going to be a very interesting season for all of us. It's definitely one that me and Alex, we really love at this time of the year. We really love getting down into it. And we've even gotten a chance to see some of them practice so far this season, and we've been really impressed.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. We got to see quite a few teams with our similar gridiron previews we've been working on throughout this month and going back to the end of July. And a lot of teams there look very impressive. Now it's just non-contact. Some of them just got the pads on. We'll see how everything goes when they're bodies on bodies, but looking very impressed with a lot of our local teams up here.
mhm. And what teams are kind of flying under the radar? Because usually every year in and year out, there's always a one team in your guys' area that just comes out of nowhere and just makes a run in the playoffs.
The two come to mind immediately for me that might be flying under people's radar. And the first one's kind of ironic. Is the Manning Tigers. They've had a lot of talent come through very recently. Tom Singleton, Tackett Curtis, Jeremiah James. These are all guys that are playing Division I college football now. And Coach Curtis moved on to Natchez Central, and now it's Southside. A lot of his talent has graduated out. So it's kind of been the fall of Rome is how it's been described around the state. But I think it's been mildly over-exaggerated. Manning Tigers are still an incredibly competitive team. They're head and shoulders above everybody else in their district. They should run through that district pretty easily, and will be out for a big playoff run in their bracket. Another team I think could be flying under the radar, could be kind of a dark horse, are the Montgomery Tigers. Montgomery, heading into last season, they held the longest on-the-field losing streak in Central Louisiana heading into last season, and they ended up getting a pretty good season out of last year, made to the playoffs, almost knocked off Lake Arthur in the first round of playoffs last season, ended up having a good year. They bring back some talent. Coach Brian Williams, he's been the head coach in Montgomery for over 2 decades. He is retired, but there is some continuity, as not only is one of his assistants taking over the program this year, but it's actually his son who was a coordinator for Montgomery. So there'll be a lot of continuity in that Montgomery Tiger program, bringing back some good players like Jacorian Shepard. He was a big threat for them at running back and at linebacker, and is looking like he could be sneakily one of the better two-way players in Central Louisiana. That's a couple that come to mind for me, are Manny and Montgomery.
Go ahead, Lamar.
I think in my end, well, I guess we'll keep up the running of the Tigers and everything. I'll also say Marksville. I think that's definitely one of those teams that we saw the improvement that they had last season, and I think this year they're going to be even better. I mean, obviously with Monk Prier, and also you have Elijah Murray, but you also gain Devin Lavallee back at quarterback, and he's a guy that they've been very high on. If he did not get hurt last season, he would have been starting for them as a freshman. But I think he gives them another element of a guy that can be a skill player that can also take it to the house if he needs to be as well. And I think Marksville is going to be one of those teams in that 2-3A district that I think they're going to really give some team fits this season, especially with the way that they play.
I definitely agree. Marksville, they're kind of flying under the radar because the attention's on other teams in their district. Gina is coming off of a semifinal run last year. They when they lost to eventual state champions in Union. They're going to be a really good team again this year, coming off a big run. Then a lot of eyes are on Bunky. Bunky's got an incredible amount of talent on their team this year. Kyle Johnson playing receiver and defensive back. He's Big 12 commit, University of Houston. Then Dylan Compton back at quarterback. He's the reigning first team all CenLa quarterback. He was the best quarterback in Central Louisiana last year, and he's back this year. He's had his sophomore year of high school. He's a junior last year. He's going to be a senior this year. So this year's going to be only his third year of varsity football. He had not played football before his sophomore year of high school, so his recruitment's a little further behind others his age and his classification, but he did pick up offers during the offseason from the United States Naval Academy and from Louisiana Christian University, so it's a little far back, but getting back on topic just a little bit, Marksville, because of the focus kind of being on his other teams, Marksville is flying under the radar. They're going to be a much more experienced team in what is an incredibly deep and competitive 2-3A district.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, of course, Bunky, was a very good team last year. I know they lost against Episcopal in the first round, which shocked me. I actually picked up Bunky. I think I picked Bunky to go to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and then I know they're a very good team. But the first thing we want to talk about is Alexandria. They're a very interesting team. Of course, they have JT Lindsay, who's an LSU commit. He's actually been on my show twice now, talking about his recruitment and eventually his commitment to LSU. And then also you have a quarterback. You have a quarterback battle going on. I know Carson Sellers is making some noise among the recruiting circles and everything like that. So, what are the expectations for this very talented Trojan team?
For the Trojans, I feel like that they have. I mean, pretty much they feel like they're a team that can possibly go down to the Dome, especially with the schedule that they have so far this season. I mean, you're scrimmaging against some of the best teams. I mean, you're scrimmaging against Acadiana this week. You're also playing against Sterlington, also in the Jamboree, and then of course you're also playing against Newell, West Monroe, and Ruston in district play. And oh, by the way, you got West Feliciana and also Destrehan on the non-district schedule there. This is a team that's going to be very battle-tested, and they really feel like that last season, them going all the way to the quarterfinals and believing that they had a chance of probably coming out of the quarterfinals against Edna Carr and having two straight trips in New Orleans, coming away with wins there. This is a team that just really believes. I feel like they have a good shot of possibly making some noise, getting in at least the Thanksgiving football, and from there, as we say, anything can pretty much happen.
Yeah, looking at Ash, the strength of their schedule this season, I feel like was purposeful to get them ready for the run that they could make this year, and to get them ready for their district. We just said 2-3A is an incredibly competitive district. This is the other incredibly competitive district that we have is District 2-5A, because you have Ash in a district with West Monroe, Ruston, Ouachita, and then out of the frying pan into the fryer, trade West Ouachita for Newell now. So you're going to be hard-pressed to find a deeper district. As far as top to bottom talent in a district, they're in a very narrow category, along with the Baton Rouge districts and the Catholic League. And I think Ash is primed for a big run this year. JT Lindsay, he was an all CenLa guy for us last year, and he's looking like he could really have a big season this year. Ash, they've also been known to have a high-flying offense. So whether it's Carson Sellers or not, whichever quarterback is going to be very highly productive in this offense. As I think we'll probably see Carson Sellers under center for the Trojans. But whoever their quarterback is, they're going to be in a very good situation with a lot of talent around them, and not going to rely on their arm solely because you have an SEC caliber recruit in JT Lindsay in your backfield. So this is looking like it could be one of the best Ash teams we've seen in a long time. It's kind of ringing like that 2020 state runner-up team, and they really feel like this is their year to make a deep run in Division I.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That 2020 team was very close to winning state championship too, only losing by 1 point to a very talented Acadiana team that repeated back-to-back in 2019-2020. Another team I want to talk about that's actually in the district is Pineville. I know Pineville really has had a rough stretch the past couple of years, but from talking to Jace and a couple of people that are familiar with the CenLa areas, that Pineville has a talented team. It's just that they're in a very tough district. So, what are kind of what are your thoughts about the Rebels of Pineville?
And with Pineville, it's like I said, out of the frying pan into the fryer. Traded West Washita for Newell, which means Pineville also traded West Washita for Newell. Their schedule's not getting any easier for them. They got to play Newell, West Monroe, Ruston, Washita, Ash. Guaranteed 5 games right there. You got to play them. It's hard to compete in a district like that. They are definitely a talented team. They're going to be a more experienced team from last season. They're returning some good guys on the offensive line for them. The quarterback situation's kind of materializing now. They look like they could be good. They have Coach Bell has a very good coaching staff with them. Coach Oliver is the brother of Buffalo Bills defensive tackle Ed Oliver. He's an assistant for him. Our guy Justin Charles, Coach JC, he's an experienced guy. He was an All-American in college at what was then Louisiana College. He's got a very good staff around him. Coach Marvin Hall. Marvin Hall has been a head coach in the area for a long time at Markswood at Peabody. Bell has a very good staff around him, and they have some good players. They just kind of got to figure out how to win again. It's been a long time since we've seen Pineville have a really good season or even just go over 500 because of just the kind of teams they have to play year in and year out. But if they can gel and use that experience and use the talent they do have and stay healthy, I think they could be a lot more competitive this year than kind of what we've become accustomed to with Pineville.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just about to say, yeah, absolutely. I mean, from what I really like about them is I like the Jacob Miranda kid. Like, he has been a really good guy. I got a chance to see him play against Winfield, and he made almost every single tackle, especially big plays when they needed him. So that's definitely going to be a guy that they're going to pretty much lean on. Also, you got Bryant Dearborn, I think, as well, as far as their also in their defensive backfield too, that can really make some plays as well. So they have talent. They have some talent. It's just also depending on, like Alice said, meshing together and also gelling together, and we'll see how they go.
I can't say enough about Jacob Miranda myself. He's a senior this year. He had a good breakout year. We've been seeing him with Pineville for a couple of years now, but he kind of came into the public consciousness last season as people knowing like, oh, Jacob Miranda, and had a really good year. He's looking like one of the better defenders, not just in their district or just in Rapides Parish, but in Central Louisiana in general. And we don't typically see that with defensive backs. It's usually we'll see a linebacker will be one of our top guys. Well, Jacob Moran's a defensive back, and he's one of our top returning defensive players in CenLa. He's picked up a couple smaller school offers. I think if he has the season we're expecting out of him this year, he can start picking up a little more high-end offers, like maybe like FCS level or maybe some group of 5 teams. But regardless of what level he ends up committing to, I'm confident we will see Jacob Miranda playing on Saturdays next season. And Pineville is low-key produced some college athletes here recently. I mean, Ethan Clark and Caden Morrow are both playing offensive line at I want to say UL Lafayette, but at Louisiana. They're playing college football in Lafayette. So there is talent there. There are guys that are that type of player, they're that caliber of player where they can go play Division I football, and Jacob Miranda looks like the next one with Pineville.
I'm glad you call yourself when you says UL Lafayette. They are very, very particular about that.
Yeah,
man, they'll attack you on Twitter, man.
Old habits die hard. A lot of people I know still haven't gotten over USL.
Yeah.
Look. I'm a ULM guy. I like to poke the bear. I'm sorry. So.
Yeah, it's still a very controversial thing. I didn't know that was a thing until I went to LSU because apparently they just hate LSU, and it's just weird. I'm like, damn, you guys hate LSU more than we hate Alabama or Florida. I mean, like, we don't even play y'all every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. That's pretty funny. But that's what makes the state great. But anyway, my next question is about Natchitoches Central. Of course, I know Jess Curtis left Central for Southside, and I think that was a pretty big blow to that program. Because I feel like, if he stayed, he probably would have done some great things in Natchitoches Central, especially with all the talent that's in that area. But now they bring in Brad Laird, who was the former head coach at Northwestern State. He's a longtime figure in high school football in the state of Louisiana. So what are the expectations for the Chiefs this year? And then also, how do they rebound from going 3-7 last year?
Go ahead, Lamar.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rebuilding process for them, honestly, because I think Owen Smith is probably going to still be their quarterback, from what I know. And if he's still there, I mean, obviously, this was a guy that can throw the ball pretty well. He had about 2,000 passing yards with Cameron Davis as his big time receiver. You lose Davis, but the thing is about Natchez Central is they always find a way to have talented athletes at the receiver, and then of course they also have a very solid defense every single year. So I'm really interested in seeing what they do there. I know this season in that Northwest Louisiana district is going to be very tough because Airline's tough. Bird's tough. Captain Shreve is tough this season, and also you got other teams like Benton, Hardin, and also Parkway. But I just think that they could probably hold on to everything, and especially you got a talented coach also in Coach Laird that from the last time I seen him coaching at the high school level. He really liked to throw the ball around and liked to have a lot of points at Ruston. So I think if he can get those kids out there, especially some of those kids that also play basketball, have them playing football as well, I think he'll have them up and running in no time. But I just think this year is going to be a little bit tough, but it's going to be a building process, though.
Yeah, I think the story with Natchez Central is kind of going to be surviving some attrition in that 1-5A district. That is an incredibly competitive district, and not to be repeating myself, but out of the frying pan into the fryer, they traded Southwood for Evangel back in 5A now. So that district is even tougher now. Airline returning, leading passer in the state, Ben Taylor, a lot of talent in him. Jarvis Davis, one of his top receivers from last season. Parkway's highly competitive. Captain Shreve's going to be very competitive again this season. And these other teams like Houghton, Benton. Benton's always a high-scoring team. Houghton had coaching change. Coach Sewell taking over at Houghton now. But continuity, he was an on-staff guy. He was a coordinator for them last year. So be some continuity to see a lot of same in that 1-5A district. If Natchez Central if they can remain healthy and they can kind of keep up with them, because that's really – I kind of see them as almost like the Big 12 of 5A in this state, because there's just so many high-scoring, high-flying offenses in 1-5A. It's going to be I believe their offense can keep up with them. We saw last year their offense was very productive. The story is going to be, can their defense slow down some of these offenses they are seeing? Because it's not just the teams they got to see in their district now. You also add in non-district games with Breaux Bridge and defending state champion Opelousas just for icing on top. So a daunting schedule for Natchez Central as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. We just actually had on Joel Rogers of 318 Sports on, and every time he broke down each team, I'm like, oh my god, this district's really going to be really really good this year. I mean, it's going to be if you were able to go 500 in this league, that's a pretty good year, and that especially with all those good teams and all the talent that they're bringing back. So I already know how that's going to look like for the Chiefs, but if they just play well defensively, they'll be fine, which is really hard to do in that league. But the next couple of teams I want to talk about. First, starting off with Peabody. Peabody, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they had their first playoff victory in their program's history. I know they have a lot of great talent coming back, and Coach Coleman's done a great job with the Warhorses. What are the expectations for the Warhorses this year, and how do they build off their success last year?
I think that's another team that's really believing, because obviously you lose Neville and now you get West Washita and Waspin to come in. That district now becomes wide open and everything. And I think you look at the Warhorses this season, that they feel like that they believe that they could possibly win themselves a district championship. Now, I know one thing that they have to really look at is their defense this season. They did graduate a lot of guys on defense last year, of the guys that they basically had. But I feel like TJ Hullaby is probably going to be a two-way guy like they had last season. And he has been really good at doing that, because you had him face against some of the better receivers, and he really got a chance to shut them down a little bit. So I think they'll probably be right there 1-2. That game between them and Wasman is probably going to be a game that everybody should circle. And I think that's going to be a Week 10 game. And it's crazy that we're talking about Peabody Wasman in football. It's like it's a basketball game and everything. But I definitely think that it is going to be one to watch out for because what Coach K has done at Wasman has been very remarkable. He has them believing as well. And I've been really impressed in seeing them from pretty much afar. But I think that game between them and Peabody, I mean, that's going to be a really, really good game. I mean, you can already imagine the band's going to go at it against each other. The cheerleaders are going to go at it against each other. Oh, and by the way, the coaches and the players are also going to go at it against each other as well.
That district's going to be another one that's going to be a very competitive district. We're really looking forward to 2024 here in CenLa because all of our districts are either just completely wide open or are going to be very competitive districts. And this is another one. Now, I do feel like Wasserman is the team to beat. They were really kind of coming to their own in the Cahey era, building a really good thing up there in Monroe. I feel like they're the team to beat right now. But after that, it is kind of open. Peabody's got a very good case to be the number 2 behind Wasserman, and they really could beat Wasserman. And you still have Franklin Parish. Franklin Parish has been a very competitive team. They're bringing back some talent this year. Tioga, we know Tioga is normally a very competitive team. They win a good amount of games every year. They're losing one of their best. Well, not one. They're losing their best defensive player, Caleb Andrus. He's transferred. He's going to go play for Acadiana this season. It's been his senior year down in Lafayette, so that's going to be a big hurt for Tioga. But Coach Cook always has the Indians very competitive. You really can't count out Grant or West Washita either because Grant has some talent. They're getting better each year. They're making a lot of investments in the program, in the football team at Grant High School, improving the situation over there. They're going to be competitive. And then even West Washita now, as they relied on Antonio Ford last year, can they kind of carry on the progress they made last season? And kind of what we've seen from West Washita is they're whenever they've been in 4A, they've been a little more competitive in recent memory. Being in 5A, I mean, it's hard to play with Ruston and West Monroe and Ash and those teams. This district in this 2-4A district, that's a little more – is not taking anything away from this district, but it's a little closer to where they should be competitively. This is going to be a very interesting district, and Peabody is going to be right in the thick of it with TJ Hullaby, one of the top athletes returning in the area. He was a really good receiver and defensive back. He's also a really good returner. And then return Larry Roberts at quarterback. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks returning in CenLa as well. And then Coach Coleman, he's been able to build a really good thing over there too. Peabody got into a bad way not that long ago. They had no 10 season. But since Coach Coleman's been here, they've made progress every single season. Feel like they've gotten better every single season, and he's building a really good thing over there in Alexandria too. So it's kind of like how they talk about Kentucky with Mark Stoops these days. Like football school, they win a district this year. Are they a football school now?
That's a good question. I mean, I know Peabody has long been known for its basketball program, but now it seems like the football program is starting to match up with them a little bit, and that's always a good thing when you have multiple sports at one school become competitive because it brings a lot more people involved in the community. Money, of course, the money comes in, and that's always the good thing about having a very successful high school athletics program because when you start winning, they start coming, and that involves money a lot. So the next team I want to ask about is Tioga. I'm very familiar with Tioga. My little brother, when he was at Brother Martin in 2020, they actually traveled up there because they had to find a team because the game got canceled. And it ended up being like, I forgot what the final score was, but it was basically a basketball score, a high school basketball score, like 50-something to 40-something. And, it was a back-and-forth game. Tioga's always been known for its high-powered offenses and also always had great athletes. So what are some of the expectations for the Indians this year, and can they make a deep push in the playoffs?
I think they could possibly. I mean, I always feel like Coach Cook is going to have this team in a good balanced way here. I mean, he's one of the coaches here that we can definitely trust in. He's going to make them find a way. And obviously, losing Caleb Andrews is going to really hurt for them this season. But I mean, they still have some guys that can really be playmakers. They really like what Curran Johnson's been able to possibly do at wide receiver. He's not a Jacorian Norris, but they really feel pretty high on him. They also feel pretty high on their running backs this season too, where they feel like that they can also make some moves this year. For themselves. Also, like you said, you got Case Malone. Another year now of him being a quarterback. That's going to really help them out as well. And, Coach Cook also told me, like, they have a linebacker that's a sophomore this season that they feel like that can be that guy like Andrews is. The only difference is obviously he does not have has not had the playing time and everything else like that. But in the next couple of years, they really feel like that he's going to be a guy that they can watch out for. So he'll have Tioga still up in there, that 5-5, 6-4 kind of record right there. Well, dude, they're going to be a team that you don't want to play against in the playoffs, and and I think their offensive line is also pretty good too with Jalen Hager, a big guy that. This is also another Tioga squad that has also been producing offensive linemen as of late as well. Hayden Crispin being a Louisiana Tech, so they're going to be right there. I think in that mix, they'll be 5-5, 6-4. They'll give some teams some fits when they come into the playoffs as well.
And they'll have some good opportunities to kind of give some teams some fits during the season because they fairly strong schedule. I mean, we talked about their district a little bit, so we kind of know what we're going to expect, what to expect to see from them in district play. But in non-district, they open up the season at week 1 and they go to Sterlington week 1. That is an incredible opponent to start off with, to go to Sterlington, and then they followed up with a trip to go see Xavier Ford at Leesville. So first 2 games on the road playing 2 very strong teams against Sterlington and Leesville, and then they close out non-district play by hosting Gina, who was a state semifinalist last year. So very strong schedule for Tioga. They're always a really good team since 2018. They've won 9 games 3 times, and they've won at least 7 every year since 2018, except for 1 year when they kind of fell off a little bit, went 3-8. But they've always had some very good defenses and some solid offense. They've had some good quarterbacks. And in fairly recent memory, guys like Logan Dubois, like Blake McGehee, who were both baseball players after high school, but were very good football players in their own right. Tioga, always an incredible team. Always seem to produce talent. Like Lamar mentioned, Hayden Crispin playing offensive line at Louisiana Tech. Jacorian Norris, he was our all CenLa Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's now playing Division I football at Louisiana down in Lafayette, and they produce some good talent. And even on a lower level, Ethan Chrisman, another former Tioga Indian, will be a senior this year at Louisiana Christian, and he is looking like one of their top offensive threats and could be an all-conference guy for LCU. So, more to story, Tioga is always an incredibly competitive team. I expect them to be over 500. It's going to be a little more difficult of a task this year because they're not bringing back quite as much, and it's a very strong schedule. But if they can make it through that non-district schedule, like 2-3 or 3-2, I'd call that a pretty good win to heading into that district because they'll already be pretty battle tested heading into district play, having played Sterlington and Leesville and Gina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good to have those tough non-conference opponents just because they'll always prepare you for the playoffs. That's what why you schedule those tough non-conference opponents, just because when you get to those playoffs, you're going to start seeing teams like that who are just already battle tested. And, they all expect to compete for state championship year in and year out. So that's what I love about this non-conference. Not only for as if you're a player or coach, you look forward to those games, but as fans, it's always great to see those matchups right before you start district play. But there's 2 teams I want to ask about in particular. I'm going to mush them together because they're both kind of the same area, and that's DeRidder and Leesville. DeRidder, of course, they lose some key players from last year, but they return a lot of players that were key contributors for them, despite being some young players. Leesville will return one of the top running backs in the state of Louisiana, Xavier Ford, and he's a hell of a back. I know he was one of the top rushers of the state in terms of yardage last year. So, what are kind of the expectations for both teams, and and then also how do you think they'll fare when it come playoff time?
Lamar, you talk about Leesville, and I'll talk about DeRidder.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about Leesville. I think Leesville this season, I think they're going to continue to run behind Xavier Ford, especially like they did last year. Last year, Xavier, I mean, he had over 2,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. And the crazy thing was that we felt like he could have done more and all that stuff. Like it's crazy because he had a great sophomore year. We were really impressed, and we felt like that he could break another ceiling here. And it's just like, okay, wow. I mean, but the thing is, he has continued to be a guy, and is now starting to get those FCS offers and also those FBS offers as well. I mean, that big Tulane offer, I think that he just got, that's a big thing, and so he's going to be a guy that a lot of people. It's crazy with the running back situations that we have around here with JT and also Xavier Ford. We're really blessed with having some good running backs this season. And I think, honestly, I feel like Leesville is going to be probably in that mix in that district. I'm not going to say that there'll be Iowa in that district, but I think they'll probably have the better of the Ritter, mainly because of Ford, because I just like what Ford has been able to do. And hopefully I can kind of finally get a chance to see him play and, him not having an injury during the season or anything else like that. So I'm excited for that.
And looking on the other side of the Hooper Trophy, looking at the DeRidder Dragons, too. A lot like that we're talking about them together because not only are they close geographically, they're also arch rivals. They play for the Balfour Hooper Trophy every year, and they kind of go hand in hand. It's like we talk about Xavier Ford a lot. Everybody knows about Xavier Ford. In his senior year, he's been an X factor for several years now for Leesville, but somebody's kind of flown under the radar is the running back for DeRidder, Reed Williams. He had a very good season last year. He was an honorable mention all CenLa guy for us. I think he could be in for a big year this year. One thing that I note with DeRidder, they losing 4 guys out of their front 7 from their defense last year, and these are 4 guys that are playing college football this year. Kenai St. Romain was a really good all-CenLa, all-state linebacker for them. He's at Kilgore College in Texas. Then another one defensive lineman at Butler Community College, one at Oklahoma Panhandle State, another one staying here locally at LC. So kind of see how they fill those gaps on their front 7. Reed Williams got a big year at running back for him. Then Dylan Rhodes, another good linebacker for them, trying to kind of fill the shoes left behind by Kenai St. Romain. Reed Williams, running back. Tanner Davis going to be the starting quarterback this year, and he's going to have a few good weapons. DeRidder typically mostly run offense, but they do pass it around a little bit, and they have some good receivers. A couple guys, Uriah Wade and Javon Fairley. Both had good seasons last year, and Jacob Hernandez is a good target at tight end. He's a little more of a blocking tight end, just that's kind of DeRidder's system, but he can catch the ball if he needs to. And DeRidder is another team has kind of beefed up their schedule a little bit this year. Some very good teams. We know about their district. Of course, they're going to have to play Leesville right off the bat in district. Iowa is going to be a really good team in their district again this year. Iowa is probably the team to beat. We'll see how they adjust to the move up to 4A now. Iowa's first time in Class 4A. See how they adjust pretty well. And then on top of Iowa and Leesville, you also have Eunice. Eunice is a very good team. They're only, 5 or 6 years removed from being a state champion. And they kind of came out of nowhere that season to be a state champion. So you never know when Eunice could kind of break through and be that kind of team again. There's a lot of talent over there in Eunice. And then in their non-district schedule, they open up on the road at South Beauregard. South Beauregard was a much improved team last year, and they're looking like they could improve again this year. So that's not a cakewalk of a opener for DeRidder. Then the next 2 games are both home games, but they have Manny, who is a very dangerous Class 2A team. And then we don't see this a lot in our area, but week 3, DeRidder actually picked up an out-of-state team from Texas for their week 3 game at home. And it's not just your typical out-of-state team or your typical team. It's the Newton Eagles, who is a team, if you know about small school, high school football in Texas, you know about the Newton Eagles. They're a very, very good team, a state championship caliber team year in and year out of Texas. That's going to be a big test for them. And then they finish out non-district schedule at Westlake and Jennings at home. And those are 2 very competitive teams too. Jennings looking like they could be the best team in their 3-3A district this year. Westlake in that same district. Westlake's getting more and more competitive. They're taking small steps, but Westlake is a team that's getting more and more competitive in the John Richardson era down there. So they have some good talent coming back offensively, returning key guys, returning a quarterback. a bell cow running back, 2 good receivers, a good tight end, return some linemen, then kind of fill some of the holes they've lost on defense, specifically in the front seven. DeRitter is a team that could be a sleeper and could make some noise in their district and in the playoffs too.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Leesville, of course, Xavier Ford's one hell of a back, and Leesville's been known for producing some big time running backs. Michael Ford, of course, Cecil Collins, and there's a couple others who are probably missing as well.
Levander Liggins, Corey McCoy. You could go on and on. Just it's like playing a Sporkle quiz. Just you could just go down the list naming great Leesville running backs. They're just that team. They are RBHS in this area, and they're one of the top running back producing high schools in the state.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And then DeRitter, of course. I was actually at DeRitter's playoff game against Lakeshore last year, and that was a great game. I remember speaking of Reed Williams, I'm glad you mentioned him because Reed Williams scored on like a 98-yard touchdown run to win the game. And I remember the play, and actually the play before that, Lakeshore was they fumbled like right before like the guy was about to walk in for an end zone, and when it was a pitch, and they fumbled it, and then DeRitter got back in the very next play that happened. And I interviewed him at the game, and I was like, "Hey, are you good to talk?" He's like, "So I'm good," because like he was really out of breath. Like it was like a very it was straight line, just like it was insane to watch that play.
But winning that Lakeshore game in the first round, I think that was huge for DeRitter as a program because they went on the road to a team that they were not favored to win whatsoever. I don't know anybody that was picking Lakeshore or picking DeRitter to beat Lakeshore in any of the pick'ems in week 1 of playoffs last year. That was a big surprise for them. Now they went into the number 1 seed in the second round. You can only do so much, but beating Lakeshore, being a team like that you were a huge underdog in the playoffs. Like it's not the lights of the Caesar Superdome, but that you can feel the heat coming off of the lights. First round playoff game on the road, and you're a big underdog and going to win that game and going all the way across the state to do it.
Oh yeah,
like that. I think that was big for their program. It kind of sets the tone to head into this season. It's like we did what we took care of business in the first round last year. People didn't think we were going to do it. We did it anyways. Kind of sets it like now we can try to take that next step to win a second round playoff game and just kind of continue to get back to where they were a few years ago when they were a quarterfinal team.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And that was a 3-hour drive. I was talking to the principal during the game. I think it was at halftime. I was like, asked him how far the drive from DeRitter was, and he said it was about 3 hours because Lake Shore is on the North Shore. It's like in Mandeville, and it's not like in Mandeville. It's like in like the country version, like Mandeville. It was like I didn't realize how because I knew it was in Mandeville. I didn't realize it was in the middle of nowhere. Like that was my first time at Lakeshore.
Not so much in Mandeville as just being in a Mandeville area code.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. But my next team I want to talk about, of course, is Gina. Gina was actually one of the teams that broke through last year and had a breakout year. They were undefeated up until the semifinals, where they ultimately lost against Union Parish, who ended up becoming the eventual state champions. What are the expectations for Gina after advancing as far as it did last year? And then also, who do they return on their team?
Yeah, they're still going to be very solid. I think they're not going to be semifinal solid, but I think that they'll probably get to the second round at least. I just think that their team, Coach Rard continues to do a great job over there. He has those guys believing, and I think they really feel pretty high on their freshman class that they have coming up, that they could probably do the same thing that these seniors just did. But they still going to have some very solid players out for this season, especially on linebacker. Tristan McClendon, I think, is one of those guys that you can look at for this season for them. Their linebacking core is probably one of the strongest ones, especially in that district with them and Bunky. I mean, I think I'll take both of their linebacking cores, to be honest with you, because I feel like those guys are really going to do a great job. But, I mean, Gina's always going to continue to play, smash mouth offense. They're going to run the ball at you no matter what happens here. And that's pretty much what they do. And I think this season they'll still be in that mix in that district with them and Bunky and and Marksville, Caldwell, and even Buckeye, I think they're still going to be somewhere in the top half of that district. I wouldn't be surprised here that if they go to the second round at least.
Gina's a team. A lot of people are kind of wondering what's going to go on with Gina this year because they lost a lot of talent off of the team last year. Eric Jones is gone for them. He is Gina's all-time leading rusher. So it's always a big gap to fill in your production when you graduate somebody like that no one to ever put on a Gina Giant uniform has ever rushed for more yards than Eric Jones. So replacing him is going to be key. They had some pretty good guys last year that got some snaps at running back. Eric Jones obviously was the show. He got the lion's share of the carries, but they have some guys that can fill in that role. I think their story is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. They're returning Colton Sharp on the defensive line, then Jacob Belcher and Tristan McClendon in a linebacking core. All three of those guys were all CenLa performers last season. Louisiana Christian has extended offers to Colton Sharp and Jacob Belcher. So that's kind of caliber. These are guys that are Saturday guys. These are guys that are going to play on Saturdays next season. And Gina, they just kind of it's almost like they don't rebuild. They kind of reload. It's just pick the next guy up to be Eric Jones, to be that kind of guy. I think they're going to live and die on their defense this year. Their defense is going to just smother people while the offense kind of figures out what they're going to be this year. And just what Coach Roark has done at Gina just can't be under exaggerated. He's won 96 games as the head coach at Gina. This is going to be his 13th season. He's won 96 games. He is Gina's all-time winningest head coach. They have, since Coach Roark took over at Gina, they have been to the playoffs more times in the Roark era than they had been in the entire history of Gina Giant football prior to him taking over as head coach. So they just really built an incredibly consistent program, and not just a consistent program, but a consistent winner, to where they're at the point to where they broke through the semifinals last year. So now it's kind of raising the expectation again. It's like now we're like in that realm where we expect to compete for a state championship. We're that caliber of team now because it was a pretty close game with them in Union Parish. We very well could have seen Gina in the state championship game against St. James instead of Union Parish. Like they were very close in that game, went undefeated all the way. Then their week 7 matchup with Bunkie last year, they were both undefeated going into that game. Gina had to go on the road. Bunkie can be an incredibly hostile environment for a visiting team because they bleed black and red in Bunkie, Louisiana, and that stadium was so packed. They had to bring in temporary stands. Everybody was over there. It was the place to be in week 7 last year, and Gina went in there and knocked off an undefeated team at their house, an incredibly talented undefeated team at that. That's Gina Giant football. They don't mind the spotlight. They don't mind the hot lights, the bright lights. They're ready to compete. It's just we got to see kind of who steps up for them this season. That's really what we're kind of waiting to see. Who can step up for them offensively, and can their defense stop a lot of these can their defense really stop a lot of the teams that they're seeing this year? Week 1, they're going to open up the season against Mangum. That's going to be a very good team again this year, the Mangum Dragons in non-district. They go to Monroe, play St. Frederick. They go to Tioga week 5, and then they go through that gauntlet. That's their district. They'll still have Bunkie, Buckeye, Caldwell, Marksville. Like these are all teams that are typically pretty good teams. So it's going to be fun to see Gina again this year. I kind of on the same page as Lamar. I don't see a semifinal run in the tea leaves this year. It's a deep bracket again, but I wouldn't be shocked if we did see them back there because they're just that kind of team.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you guys kind of mentioned that Bunkie Gina game because that kind of segues into my next question. Bunkie brings back a lot of talent. Dylan Compton, of course, comes to mind at quarterback. Kyle Johnson, of course, is a Houston commit, and his recruitment might keep blowing up, even though he's committed. I know he's committed to Houston right now, but we don't know, what could come and play as the season goes on. But I'm looking at this, Division III select. I know it's very rugged, even though U High and St. Charles leave, you still have some pretty good teams like Newman and Calvary's coming back there to defending state champions. But is there a scenario where you could see the Panthers make some kind of Cinderella run to get to the Dome, to get to the semifinals, if not to the Dome?
Yeah, anything's possible. I feel like. I mean, I know they'll be battle tested, especially like you said, they'll be battle tested, especially in Division 3 select. Because man, that's a brutal bracket right there. You have Calvary, you have OCS, you have Newman. You just so many teams out there that you pick those teams, you name them. There, I think what's gonna really help them is they got the first taste of that bracket this last season, and it wasn't like that they just came out of nowhere, and this is their only shot here. And next thing they didn't know what to expect. I think the Episcopal game that they had last season really kind of got them understanding. Hey, look. We need to. This is the level that we have to play against, and I really like what they did this season by scheduling tough, especially when they did their non-district. I mean, you start off a game against St. Mary's, which I know St. Mary's is a little bit down this season, and they're not as good as they've been. But again, that's a good Catholic school there that has had some very good success. And I think those games there that kind of you have to kind of get an idea and a feel of who you got to face against, and that's probably going to really help them out this season because I think having to face against some of those private teams, those private schools there, down to get a feel of how they play against. And so I think that's going to be something here that this season, like I said, I think they'll probably play. They'll probably get to at least Thanksgiving football, especially with the talent that they have. And then after that, I mean, it's just pretty much again whoever has the best night. And I think they definitely will have some of the best players out there on the field, not just only in Compton, not just only in Johnson, but also, Zion Lee at linebacker. I mean, he's definitely going to be another guy that we're going to be really talking about over the next couple of years too.
Yeah, Bunky, they're obviously getting a lot of attention about Dylan Compton, Kyle Johnson. We have already discussed them. They're going to be Saturday guys. Kyle Johnson's a Power 5 level recruit committed to Houston. They're bringing back some good guys on their offensive line. Now, it's not a huge offensive line. We got to go see them at practice, and I kind of saw them. I was like, these aren't huge guys. Their biggest offensive lineman is 260. That's their biggest guy. That's J.D. Smith. He's going to be a senior this year. Who he actually picked up an offer from Division III Millsaps College pretty recently. So his recruitment's kind of starting to pick up and get some offers there. But looking at specifically their linebacking core, they're 3-4 formation on defense. They're bringing back 3 out of 4 of their starting linebackers. That's Zon Lee, Luke Norman, and Lucas Mose. All 3 of them had over 100 tackles last season. All 3 of them are at least 2-year starters, and they're only juniors this year. All 3 of them are juniors. So they're going to be back again next year. They have a case for one of the best defensive fronts in the area with those 3 guys. On Lee is the star with their defense, but these other 2 linebackers, Norman and Mose, were also guys that were incredibly competitive. Mose, 123 tackles and a pick. Norman had 141 tackles and 4 sacks. So this defensive front, while people are kind of focusing on the offense, this defensive front for the Bunky Panthers is going to be very competitive too. It's going to get fits to a lot of the teams they're going to see this year. Like Lamar talked about, they're going to open up the season at St. Mary's, and they're going to follow it up week 2. They're going to go down to Lake Charles and play a pretty good St. Louis Catholic team. Like St. Louis has been a good program for a while, a very consistent program, a lot of talent coming through that program as well. So trying to challenge themselves right away, and then after starting off the first 2 games of the season on the road, they have to come back home for a rivalry game against the Vols. And this isn't the same Vols team we saw in 2021 or 2022 when they made it to the semis and the quarters respectively. But this is going to be a pretty decent Vols team again this year. They are just one of the scrappiest teams we see year in and year out. They're just tough as nails, and they're ready to go out and punch you in the mouth for 4 quarters and dare you to stop them. So that's going to be it's a big rivalry, interparish rivals. So to have that coming off that 2-game road trip, it almost kind of smells like it could be a trap game. We'll have to see how it goes there. Then follow that up with a host of Central Catholic of Morgan City in week 4. That's another really good private school. And we got to talk to Coach Hillman recently, and that was kind of concept. They in a bracket where they're going to be seeing a lot of private schools, so they wanted to get some private schools on the schedule in non-district because it's all public schools in district play. So they want to get some of these private schools kind of get used to what they're going to be seeing And because once you make it to the Division III select bracket, it's every man for himself. Because we know Episcopal went to Bunkie and beat them last year. Episcopal have not quite never had to break through to that state championship game. But Travis Bourgeois has built a consistent winner at Episcopal. Then one of their district opponents is Dunham. Elijah Haven is up and coming quarterback in the state of Louisiana. He's the number 1 ranked prospect in the state of Louisiana for his class. He is a guy that's going to play big time Power 5 football whenever he leaves from Dunham. Then you got Notre Dame, you got Calvary Baptist, you got Newman, and you also have add back ends like St. Charles playing up to 4A, but they just swapped spots with Lafayette Christian. Lafayette Christian is back in that district now, a team that is, if they're not playing in the Superdome, it's a disappointment. Like, that's the type of program Lafayette Christian is. So there's just a plethora of just incredible teams in that bracket. There just got to be a fine-tuned machine by the time they get past week 10. And with the schedule they have and with the talent they have, I don't see why they couldn't be. And my wife called me. I don't see why they couldn't be. And just the feeling in Bunkie is like, this is it. This is the year. Like, everything is just like the stars are aligning and they can read it in the tea leaves. Like, this is the year for Bunkie to make the run. A super talented team. Look at some good opponents to get them ready for the playoffs. Like, it will be a tough ask for them just to get to Thanksgiving. And that's not any kind of takeaway on Bunkie. That is just the type of bracket they're in. Like, when you really look at like pound for pound, Division III Select is probably the toughest bracket to play in because of how many teams just top down are really good. Like the one seed could win the state championship in that bracket. The 12 seed could win the state championship in that bracket. Like, they're all on that level, but they really feel like this is the year Bunkie can make a run. Quarters would be an incredibly successful season for them. I think 2008 was the last time Bunkie made it to the quarterfinals, and they haven't been to the semifinals since the early 1980s. So if they can make it to Thanksgiving in the bracket they're in, I would be taking them as an underdog to possibly move on to the semifinals and be a contender.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also want to mention Elijah Haven, who's the quarterback for Dunham. He is now the number 1 prospect in his class, period, no matter the state national.
That is right. The number 1 ranked prospect in the nation. He's gonna be a sophomore this year, I believe. So it's like class of 27.
Yeah. In the class of 2027, there's literally 3 quarterbacks in the top 10 in the state of Louisiana. 3 of them.
The quarterback play, Louisiana is such an underrated state for quarterbacks. Now, people have we knew about Terry Bradshaw, the Mannings, like guys like that coming out of Louisiana for years, but even going back like Doug Williams, like we've produced really good quarterbacks in this state for a long time. It just kind of felt like it kind of came in waves. Like you get a Terry Bradshaw in the 60s, and you had a Doug Williams in the 70s and 80s, and then you had the Mannings in the 90s. But now it's feeling like it's year in and year out. We are producing excellent quarterback talent in this state. Lamar knows what I'm talking about. Every year for about the past 9 or 10 years, so I compile, because I have no life. So I compile a list. I look at every single college football roster in the nation, and that's not an exaggeration. Lamar can attest to that. And I find every player from Louisiana, and I'll list them by the high school they went to. And the amount of quarterbacks that we have playing college football on every level, but specifically in Division I, is incredible. Guys like Ricky Collins, Walker Howard, going back to pick a St. Thomas More quarterback, really. Like, we're producing top quarterback talent these days. I mean, Arch Manning, like you couldn't talk about anything else but Arch Manning for 4 years. These are the types of guys we're producing in the state of Louisiana, and a lot of colleges are starting to take notice of it now, and now the recruiting rankings are taking notice of it now. Arch Manning was way up there, but a lot of our guys were a little underrated, but now Elijah Haven taking over that spot as the number 1 prospect in the nation for the class of 2027. I feel like that's really putting everybody else on warning, like, hey, Louisiana, like, we produce some good, like, it's DBs and receivers in the state, but like, we're producing top tier quarterback talent in the state of Louisiana too.
Yeah, and also the offensive line was another position that's really boomed in the state of Louisiana. That's usually a position where you might have 1 or 2 guys come and go every few years. Now it just seems like every year there's a big time offensive lineman in the state of Louisiana. But there's one last school I want to talk about, and before before I'm going to let you guys go, and that's Rose Pine. Rose Pine just went through a coaching change for the first time in quite a bit. Last year was kind of a down year for them, and usually they're one of the better teams in y'all's area. And also, I want to mention this too, is that they're now a select school. The past few years, they've been a non-select school, and same thing with Leesville. They were a non-select school for a while. Now they're a select school. So what's kind of the vibes around Rose Pine right now with the new coach? I know it's an in-house hire, but with a new head coach period, because that's a new. It's always weird to hear a new voice in the building, especially a guy who's there for so long.
Looking at Rose Pine, it was kind of a weird situation for him last year. They Coach Ducote was going to retire last year. Some things happened. The other coach didn't stick around, and Ducote said, "You know what? I'll put my retirement off for one more year, so you have some continuity." Didn't perform quite as well as they would have liked to, as well as they had. Like, around the time of Voyles was really good. At the same time, Rose Pine was really good. Rose Pine played Manny down tooth and nail in the playoffs, and I can't remember if it was for it was in the second round, if it was in the quarterfinals. But Rose Pine has never made it out of the second round in school history, and they came very close to doing it by almost beat Manny, losing that game 14-7 in that playoff game. And this isn't going to be one of the better Rose Pine teams we've seen. I know moving over to the select side doesn't help. Vernon Parish is an open enrollment parish. A lot of people didn't realize. I didn't realize that either until it was announced that these teams were going to be on the select side, and Rose Pine and Leesville, which it's unfortunate for Rose Pine and Leesville. They're the only ones that are going to have to deal with it, because all of the Pickering's not playing for district honor, so it's not going to apply to them. Then every other school in the parish is B and C, and B and C voted to come back together for all their sports anyway. So it's really just Leesville and Rose Pine have to play on that select side. Rose Pine, they have a pretty tough schedule this year. They had to pick up a lot of non-district games. They only have 3 district games this season because it was a 5-team district. It makes with them and some of our Southwest Louisiana teams with East Bow and DeQuincy and Vinton and in same district with Pickering. But as I said, Pickering not playing for district honors, which means only 3 district games. So they going to do some traveling. They open up the season at Westlake and at week 2 at Grand Lake. Like that's two pretty good teams. Grand Lake going back down to 1A. That was a district opponent for Rose. Not for Rose Pine, but that was one of the 2A teams in Lake Charles area. Grand Lake's a very competitive team. So kind of a similar thing as Bunkie. You got at Westlake week 1, at Grand Lake week 2, and then back home week 3 for your home opener, but it's hosting the Kinder Yellow Jackets. Like that is an incredibly tough team year in and year out. They've kind of come back to earth a little bit the last couple of seasons, but it's still a very dangerous team. Then at Ascension Episcopal, you got to play Mansfield week 7. Mansfield's their last non-district game. They are kind of a sneaky little team too. They produce a lot of good talent. They have Jalen O'Neill was a defensive back from Mansfield last year. I believe he's returning, and if he is, that'd be huge because he had 8 interceptions. Like that's a big tough schedule for Rose Pine. I think they'll compete for their district because it's not the strongest district ever. I don't think Vinton's going to be a factor, but it'll be a kind of a 3-way race between Rose Pine and DeQuincy and East Beauregard to take on a district. DeQuincy kind of bringing back some talent. East Beauregard. Normally what we see with East Beauregard is that I was a team that was in my district when I was in high school. Normally what you saw with East Beauregard is they were struggled in 2A. They're a little more competitive on 1A, but they're looking like this could be the exception to the rule where they're back in 2A, but they're looking like they could have a good season under Coach Ronnie Simmons. They're bringing back some key guys for them, so that's going to be a very interesting thing. What's going to be tough for Rose Pine is not only do they have to play DeQuincy and East Beauregard back-to-back, week 9 and week 10, they are on the road for both of those games. So they have to go to DeQuincy and then turn around and go to East Beauregard. So they'll be battle-tested by the time they get to that point with Westlake, Grand Lake, Kinder, Ascension Episcopal, Mansfield, Winfield. They'll play some solid teams, but we'll really see what they got in them when they get to that week 9 and week 10 point to where these are the 2 teams we're going to have to beat to win district, and we have to go to their house back-to-back weeks. If they can do that, I think it might bode a little better for them in the playoffs, but I believe there'd be Division 4 select, so it'd be like with some of the 1A prize coaches. They're one of the smaller 2A teams. That's not as bad as being in Division 3 select, but they'll still be seeing some incredibly competitive teams in that Division 4 select size. This isn't going to be the the greatest Rose Pine team ever, but they have a very good opportunity to still be a very competitive team, and they will absolutely will compete for a district title.
Go ahead, Lamar.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, everything that Alex said. I mean, I think this is going to be the same thing for them. I mean, I think they're pretty much in a reloading stage right now. I know last season the tough thing was they couldn't really find offense, and I think it's probably going to be kind of the same thing. But if they can cobble up some offense, I think they'll be all right. Frank Rosgrant, like you mentioned before, I mean, he at least knows the program. He did have a stint away from the program, but at least by coaching in college and everything. But he does know the program. He does at least bring back maybe some college skills, some college schemes there, and I think that's probably going to bode well for the future here. Um, it's just all basically for them, all just about building up for the future for them, and I think they'll be okay for the future leading up there because this Rose Pine group, this Rose Pine I mean, I think they're going to be all right leading up to it, but they're going to take their lumps this year. I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. Okay, that wraps up our show for today. I'm your host, Grant Sashray. I'm joined here, of course, Alex Newell, Lamar Gafford of CenLaPreps. Thank you guys for hopping on to talk a little bit about high school football in you guys' area.
Thanks for
Hey, you're
having
so
us
very welcome.
at CenLaPreps LLC
Yep,
on social media. Check us out on CenlaPreps.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make sure also.
absolutely. Got a lot of good stories. So
Yeah, and also also both their Twitter bios will be not their Twitter pages will both be in the link, so you guys can go give them a follow. They produce a lot of great content in their area, and that's an area that really not a lot of people talk about. There's still some good teams down there, a lot of great athletes down there, and I think they deserve a little bit more. Deserve a little bit more praise because there's some good football down there, man. There's always good football, no matter where it's at in the state. Just because they're not New Orleans or Baton Rouge or Lafayette or Monroe, that doesn't mean there's not good football. And these guys are two of the best that do that in their area.
yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, look, it's when we tried to start this voyage by having our own website and everything, I think it was kind of one of those things that we were kind of scared, trying to see how this was going to go. But I knew Alex definitely was going to be a guy that pretty much he knows sports just like I do, and he has a passion for this area just like I do as well. And I couldn't have a better partner there. So. I'm happy for him.
The
Happy for the both of us.
Lamar speaks good on me. He's been a very good mentor the last 10 years, taking in a gangly little LC student under his wing and has grown into a great partnership. Glad to see CenLaPreps get off the ground and try and lift up these teams and get some publicity for our teams here. Because, like Grant said, there's a lot of good football being played in Central Louisiana. It's not grabbing a bunch of headlines like other areas might be with some of their teams, but there is some excellent football being played in Central Louisiana and in our other sports, baseball, softball, basketball. There's a lot of good high school athletics going on in Central Louisiana, some good teams and some incredibly passionate fan bases I've seen over the years. I've been all over the state seeing high school football games, and some of these places, like you go to a place like Bunker, or go to a place like Gina, or go to a Tioga, like they are rabid about their high schools and about their teams. So just check us out and help us keep supporting our local teams.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys, have a good one.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
No problem.